Right, so welcome back to the George Russell kart build. Today we're getting all of this stuff built onto that chassis. If you haven't already, please go back and watch part 1, 2 and 3 so you can keep up with all the progress that we've made so far. In the last episode we picked up the chassis from powder coat. We need to get that built now, so let's crack on. First on the list, we need to get the stickers on the chassis, which as you remember, if you're watching episode 2, they're up here. So let's get them off and on the chassis. So it goes in between these two black chassis rails, so we'll try and get it on straight. Obviously it's not going to have as much stick as it used to because it's a used sticker, but we've got to use it because we haven't got a choice. There we go, that actually looks quite good. There we go, how good do they look? They look so much better on a black chassis instead of the blue. Next up on the list, we need to drill out all of the powder coat from all the holes that are tight fitting. So let's get a drill bit in and let's clean up these holes. That's them all done. Let's give them a wipe down, get rid of all the little bits of powder coat. So the first job we need to do is we need to get this steering column support so we can pop steering column in and then we can put the floor tray on. This piece first, this bolt and some new nuts. And also the upper brackets for the nacelle panel. So let's get them on now. Right, so first off, need to put a washer on the bolt, then the bolt through the nacelle panel bracket, and then we're going to pop another washer on. So first bit going on the car, it's actually quite exciting. Another washer on, then we need the other nacelle panel bracket, another washer, and a nut. Let's get the first part tightened up. So that's tightened up, however, the bolt is too short. So we need to change that and put a longer one in. That is much better. We need the steering column, we need the steering column collar, but first off, we need to put the bearing back in the chassis. Right, so the method of getting this bearing in is the same way that we took it out. We need to get it in as far as we can and then get a socket and just basically hit it. Before you ask, yes, I have cleaned the powder coat out of that. And after a million hits and one hit to the thumb, it's in. Let's get the circlip in. Should be easier than getting it out. We'll just pop it in. There we go, circlip's in. All right, so next up, steering column with the sleeve on, of course. We don't want to forget that. We need to angle this back, slide the steering column in, bend it back down again, and then pop it in the bearing that we just hammered in. And then a new nut and a washer to go underneath. Allen key through the steering column, spanner down here, turn the steering column until it goes tight. There we go, tight. Right, so next up, we slide this collar up here, leave a little bit of a gap to the plastic up above, and tighten these two grub screws up. The steering column is in. Right, so next up is the floor tray. We just lift the chassis up, slide it underneath. All of our nuts and bolts prepared. Let's get this bolted in. Rubber washer in between the floor tray and the chassis. Black countersink bolts that we got from KART Parts UK, and then we put a nut underneath. And then it's the same for the rest of them, so I'll do that now. Let's tighten these up. Right, so there we go, the floor tray is in. Next up, pedals. Right, so these go together pretty simply. It's just a countersink bolt straight into that threaded piece there. So let's put them in. One pedal. I'll do the same with the other one now. There we go, both pedals are done. Let's get them on the cart. We just need to put a bolt in now, and then this little bushing, which slots in there nicely. The first gold part on the cart. So I've got the pedals on, but I am missing a part. The first part that we're missing is a little piece that goes on here, so it holds the pedal up there. So I'll have to get that next week from KART Parts, as it's the weekend now. But we'll tighten these up for now, and we'll crack on with the rest of the stuff. So I'll tighten those up in a minute. But you may have already noticed in the background, I've already cleaned up the exhaust, engine, carburetor, and airbox. This is actually the engine off the Lando kart, because we needed the shock stickers on the Lando kart. All of that's done. I thought I'd not film it, because it's pretty boring just watching me scrub an exhaust. I'll spare you from that. Let's get these pedals tightened up and then crack on with the next bit. So I'm just going to hold these pedals upright for now and over tighten them slightly so they stay in place. Pedals are tight. So next up, let's get this front end built. So let's get the stub axles in and then we can put the track rods on to the steering column. Right, so first up, we need to put the caster pills in the top. So 2 spaces go on the top and then the stub axle in. And then before we push it through to the other side, we need to get the spacer underneath as well. There we go, stub axle in. Just need to pop the other caster pill underneath now, put a new nut and a washer on. Let's get this tight now, and that is one side done. I'll do the other side now. I'll come back to you when I've got it done. So that's both the stub axles on, nice and tight. These came in the post last week. We need to get these track rods built up and then get them on the cart. Right, so let's get these built up. One side will be right hand thread and then the other side will be left hand thread. So we're getting wound up most of the way like that. There we go, that's those two done. Let's get them on the cart now. Right, so making sure the flat edge is on the outside of the cart so it's easier to get to. We just need to pop a bolt in there and one of the little spaces that we cleaned up, and then that goes in the middle hole. Then we need to do the same on the other end, bolt through there and then that in the outer hole, and simply just a nut and a washer underneath. There we go, that's one on. Let's do the other side. So that's those two on. Let's get them tightened up now, and then we can put the lasers on and get this tracked up. Right, so these are lasers. So what you'll see is on the front of these, they've got boxes and squares. These boxes are 2mm. The little dot in the middle means 1mm from the edge of this box. These go on either side, so we put these on the chassis, get the steering straight, get these level, and then we can turn the lasers on and get these right. Right, so as you can see, it says forward here. So this one goes on the right-hand side of the cart. Then the same on the other side. Then what we need to do, we need to get the steering straight. Let's get these level now. There we go. That's level. Also level. Now these will need to be re-leveled in a minute because we know quite far out from each other. As you can see, that one is pointing at the wall. With this side, these nuts are going to be tightening backwards towards the back of the chassis. So what we need to do, we need to tilt those back so they're tight against their own bolt. Same goes for the other side, but it goes forwards. There's a nice little trick for you. So when you're tightening up your track rods, your eyelets don't get misaligned from each other. All we need to do is get our finger and wind these out. So as you can see, as I wind it out, that moves forward. So we'll go for there for now because that looks relatively straight, and then we'll do the same for the other side. So there we go. They're a little bit better now, but let's get it fine-tuned with the lasers. We need to get these re-leveled now. There we go. That one's that level. That one's already level. Perfect. So all we need to do is move this slightly, tighten this and loosen this. You can see the laser moving. We'll loosen it off. There we go. That's dead center now. So we'll move that. That is also dead center. Now this chassis is obviously slightly bent because the laser on that side lines up perfectly. And the laser on this side is about 2mm up. But we're not too worried about that because this is only a show kart. It's never really going to go on the track. It's only going to do a couple of laps, so it does not matter. So I'll get those tightened up now, and then I'll come back to you, and we'll crack on with the next bit. Right, let's get this front bar in now. Slot this in here, just like that, and then we just need to put the bolts through the top. Right, that's those in. We need to get the nuts underneath, and then tighten them up. Next up is the top chrome bar. I've already got one bolt on the rubber washer on, other side on. Let's get this done up. There we go, that's that done up. Next up is the front nacelle panel bracket. Let's pop that in, get that tightened up too. That's another part on. So I just need to put a throttle stop bolt in there, slide that through, and then a nut on the back. Next up, we need to get all these cable adjusters in all of these holes. There's 5 of them all together. So one goes in here for the throttle cable, and then 4 for the brakes. There we go, that's all them in. I'll get them tightened up. We need to get the brake cable outers on now and cut fit to size before we get the brakes on. That's one cut. Let's get those slotted in. Perfect. Right, so next up, let's get the seat mounts in. I've got all the bolts ready. Right, it's just these little brackets that we took off. The bolt goes through the front and a washer on the back. And then obviously it's the same on the other side. Right, that's those in. Right, next up, let's get this brake caliper on. So it's a bit tricky to get on because we've got cables going absolutely everywhere, and we need to undo these and slide them through the seat rail. So I'm going to slide it on for now, and we'll undo them and get them in the right place. A bit tricky with these cables in the way. Pop the nut and the washer on, and then I just need to undo this side of these cables and slot them through the seat post mount. Unclip it, undo it. Pop it through. Right, that's one side on. There we go. And then we'll click that back on. And there we go. That's them on. Next up, let's get these cables unwound and then threaded through all the way to the pedal. This one is the bottom one, so we need to go through that hole there. We need to go inside the seat post and through this hole here. And we'll just pull it all the way through. Get that pulled all the way through as well. There we go. That's the cables in. Let's get this caliper tightened up now. Right, so let's get this caliper tightened up. And there we go. We have brakes. Right, so that's the brake on the cart now. Let's start building the rear end up. Let's get these bearings in the bearing carriers, and then we'll get the bearing carriers in. These just slot together really easily. They slot in there like that, and then we just need to give that a twist, and there you go, there's one bearing in. We need to do the other one the same, but the opposite way around, because obviously it'll sit on the other side of the cart. We need to put it through that way, and then turn it the opposite way to the other bearing. Now, before we put these in, we just need to put a new pinch bolt in. Let's get these tightened up, and then we'll pop them in the chassis. Right, this one is the engine side because the grub screws face inwards, so let's pop that in the engine side, and then the other one, I'll put the pinch bolt in, and then we'll pop it in the other side. Right, that's that in. Let's get some bolts for it now. Right, so I've got all my bolts ready. We're going to leave it at the highest ride height we can because I'd like to keep this chassis nice and high off the ground so we don't ruin our new powder coat. So we'll get these bolts in and get them tightened up. We need to put 2 more on the top of this one to hold the chain guard bracket on, but I'll do that in a minute. I'll do the other side now, and I'll come back to you when I need to put the chain guard brackets on. Right, so this is one of the chain guard brackets. The holes are countersunk, so we need to use a countersink bolt to give ourselves a little bit more room between that and the sprocket carrier. So next up, we need to get the axle and all the bits on it. So we need to build up the brake disc first. So let's do that. So let's get this brake disc built up, and then we'll get these tightened up, and then we'll get the axle in the cart. There we go, brake disc is ready to go in. So let's get that axle in now. I've just had to swap around the bolts in the brake disc carrier. They were poking out too far with the nuts this side, so I've swapped them around for some countersinks so they sit a little bit flusher. I've now got much more room to be able to put that in. So let's get this axle in now. So let's get it through the bearing first, then through the brake disc. I'm hoping to be able to do this without using a hammer, but I have a feeling that's not going to happen. Let's get through the other bearing now. Nope, I need a hammer. I think that's about right. Get it measured up and make sure it's equal on both sides. So we'll measure it up to the gold on the bearing carrier. So that is currently at 182 mil. And that one, wow, 182. I could not have guessed that any better. Let's get those grub screws tightened up then, and then we can get the sprocket carrier on. That's one done up. We'll get the other one done up over here, and then we'll move on to the other side and get that one done too. And then let's get these two done up too. Right, so next up, we need to get a new pinch bolt in this brake disc. We'll just knit that up for now. When we get the cables wrapped around the pedals, that's when we'll center the brake disc up. We'll do that then. Put the axle keyway in first, and then we get the sprocket carrier, which I've already put the nice new bolts in, and slide that over the top. We'll just knit this up for now because we don't know where the sprocket needs to be. So we'll just tighten it up a little bit for now. Right, so let's get these hubs on. I've already put the new bolts in. Let's slide them on. I don't know where the width needs to be, so we're just going to guess for now and put them slightly inside the axle. And that will do for now. But let's get it tightened up. We'll get the other side done now, and then we're done with the axle. Right, that's the other hub on. I had to give it a couple of taps to get it on. Let's get it tightened up. There we go. All the axle is in, and it spins nice and freely too. So let's make a start on getting on the wiring loom and the fuel line on, and then the fuel tank in. So in order to get the wiring loom on, we need to come over here, grab the steering wheel, because we need to make sure all of the wires line up nicely with the back of the micron. So let's get a bolt in that, get that on, and then we can do all the wiring. There we go, steering wheel on. So the first wire we need to do is the rev lead, which is the trickiest one of the lot. You need to push it up through there, make a little 180, and push it back down through the other hole. There we go, that's one in. Right, so next up, temp lead. I got this in the post yesterday, which came in perfect timing. So let's get the temp lead in, which goes at the top. Next up, we need to do the lap position center, because these old microns used to have a magnet that went to a line across the circuit for them to register a lap time. So we need to get that on. It's usually a lot shorter because it bolts down onto the floor tray, which we will need to drill a hole for. Right, so let's get this in so we're ready to drill some holes. So we need to organize these wires. This one needs to go off in that direction towards the floor tray, and these two need to go off towards the engine, which is this way. So the best way to do these cables is turn the steering wheel as far to the left as it will go, because that is the furthest these cables are going to have to travel. And the best way to put these on is with black insulation tape. So let's get these wires nicely organized along the side of the steering column support. I'll set up a time lapse now and I'll get these done. It's quite boring to watch. Right, that's all of them on now. We're going to leave these loose for now because we need to get the engine on and make sure these are in the right place before we tape them down or cable tie them down. Now we need to drill the hole for this and get it over here. Right, so this is going to go, I think, here. So whenever you're drilling holes in metal, you're always going to be left with a really sharp, horrible edge, and just give it a really light touch with the countersink bit. Much smoother, much nicer. Right, let's get this bolted down now. We've got a countersink bolt from underneath and a washer and a nut. Make sure this is straight so it's facing forward or backwards. There we go, another piece done. Right, let's get the fuel tank in now. Slots in nice and easily, and just one of these thumb screws in the back. Right, that's that in. Let's get the breather tank on and then the fuel line on too. Right, let's get this breather tank in. Very simply, just slots between those and then one cable tie around it. Snip the cable tie short, and that's another job done. Right, let's get some fuel line now. Pop it over the breather tank hole in the fuel tank, line it up with the actual breather tank, snip that off, and then we'll get that on too. So the reason we put the fuel tank in before doing the fuel line is because I need to work out exactly where the starting point is, so I need to know where to tape it. Get the fuel line on, then we'll tape the first bit, and we'll take the fuel tank out and then tape it. So let's get this fuel line on here. Right, there's the bend, nice and open, bit of tape on it. So let's get this fuel tank out. I'll get the other two bits done now, and I'll put the fuel tank back in, and then I'll come back to you. Right, so there we go. The fuel tank's in, all the fuel lines are done, all the wiring's done, ready to put the engine on, but we're going to do that in the next episode. So next up, let's start putting some bodywork on. I've already put the bolts in the nacelle panel. We're going to leave it loose for now because we've still got to re-drill that bottom hole because I don't know who did that, and also we've got to take them off anyway to do the stickers. Right, so I've just re-drilled the hole on the front of the nacelle panel. Unfortunately, it crosses over a little bit. It doesn't look very good, but there's no need to worry because we're putting stickers on this anyway, so you're never ever going to see it. There we go. The first piece of blue is on the car. Obviously, it's not tight because we still need to put the stickers on, as I said. Let's crack on and get some more stuff on this car. Right, let's get an engine stop bolt in there because we're going to need that. Right, so next up, let's get this exhaust cradle done. The rubber washer through there, with a washer and a nut. Right, let's get this exhaust bracket on. I popped the bolts in there already. Looks a little bit scabby on the inside, but it doesn't matter because you're never going to see it because there's going to be an exhaust in it. Right, that's that tightened up enough. On to the next job. Right, so after much messing about, I've got the seat in. All of the spaces are in the right place. Next up, I need to get the side pods back on the side pod bars, so I'm going to set up a time lapse and get that going. Right, so there we go. The side pod bars are now on. I've left the bolts loose for now because we need to undo them and take them off to put the stickers on anyway. We've got silver on the outside and black on the inside, which is what I believe George had. So let's get these on the cart. The right-hand side one on first. You need to slot it in at the front and then bend it outwards and pop it in at the back. Just like that. Right, so let's get the bolts in now. Very simple. Just slide them through, put the nut on. We're going to leave those loose for now because the bolts are a little bit too long and I need to get some shorter ones. But I want to crack on and get as much done today as we can. So let's pop the other side pod on now. There we go. That's in. Let's get the bolts in. So one bolt in the front. And that is the side pods on. Right, so the final piece for this episode. Let's get this nose cone on. And then you'll have to join me in episode 5 to see this cart complete. Right, that's the top thumb screw in. Let's get this last thumb screw in and then get these tight. There we go. They're tight. So there we go. The new nose cone is on. All the bodywork's on as well. This cart looks absolutely incredible compared to what it looked like earlier this week. That black looks absolutely brilliant. Everything looks really nice and shiny and looks really good again. So that's going to be it for this episode, but I've got something to show you before I go. So yesterday, I had something in the post from Jake Designs, and I have a feeling you guys know what it's going to be. So I'm going to give you a little sneak peek to what these look like, and then we're going to put them on in the next episode. So let's have a quick look and see what they look like. These look absolutely brilliant. I can't wait to put these on the cart. But that's all you're going to see for now. But you're going to have to join me in the next episode to see all those stickers on that cart and all of these last bits to go on. The engine, the wheels, the rear number board and the rear bumper and the chain guard and all these few bits around here. Then the cart will be finished. So if you don't want to miss this cart being finished, join me in the next episode where we're going to put all these final bits on and them stickers too. So join me in the next episode. Like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss this cart being finished. And I'll see you in the final episode of getting this George Russell cart built.